accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, PL 1975, Chapter 231, adequate notice of this regular meeting of the Board of Adjustment of the Township of Franklin has been provided. Would you call the roll, please?
Anthony Caldwell.
Here.
Laura Grauman. Here. Donald Johnson. Here. Bruce McCracken.
Here.
Alan Rich. Here. Robert Shepard asked to be excused. Gary Rosenthal.
Here.
Joel Reese. Yep. Cheryl Bethia.
Here.
Cheryl Bagalo asked to be excused. And Chairman Thomas.
Yes, here. Minutes, no minutes, resolutions, corporate community connection, ZBA 17-00001. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Anthony Caldwell.
Yes.
Laura Grauman.
Yes.
Bruce McCracken.
Yes.
Alan Rich.
Yes.
Gary Rosenthal.
Yes.
Robert Thomas.
Yes. Abel Smith, ZBA 19-00002. We need a motion?
Move. Second.
Anthony Caldwell.
Yes.
Laura Grauman.
Yes.
Alan Rich.
Yes.
Gary Rosenthal.
Yes.
Chairman Thomas.
Yes. Jared Sutton, ZBA 18-00018.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Anthony Caldwell.
Yes.
Laura Grauman. Donald Johnson.
Yes.
Who do I have? Wait, I'm sorry, not Donald Johnson. Alan Rich.
Yes.
Gary Rosenthal.
Yes.
And Chairman Thomas.
Yes. Nothing under discussion. Hearing is a continuance from the last meeting, Green Care Farm, ZBA 19-00003. The applicant is seeking a D1 use variance associated with the site plan and a C variance for construction of a 9,000 square foot dementia care facility at 389 Bennett's Lane, Somerset, Block 85, lots 15.06, 15.07, 15.08 in the R40 zone. We pretty much got through most, if not all, the testimony. We have some loose ends to tie up. I believe we asked for a little bit more information, and then if there are any other witnesses or other information that you want to provide, we'll hear that, then we'll open to the public.
Good evening. I'm Nicole Voigt. I am attorney for Green Care Farms. Because we did cover so much ground last time, as you just stated, we are only going to provide some limited additional testimony to specifically address some of the questions that you had. To that end, without further ado, I want to call Betsy Dolan, traffic. Actually, you know what? I'm going to start with David Burrell. David Burrell is one of the owners, come on up, of Green Care Farm. You're going to be sworn in, David. If you could.
He's got to grab a microphone.
More comfortable.
That right there is fine, just make sure you use the mic.
Make sure it's on.
Okay, it's on.
Could you raise your right hand?
Yes.
You swear the testimony you're about to give should be the truth.
I do.
Your name and address, please.
David Burrell, 566 Princeton, Kingston Road, Princeton, New Jersey.
Could you spell your last name, please?
Barile.
Thank you.
Dr. Burrell, could you please, if you prefer, could you please briefly provide some details as to your expertise with respect to dementia and dementia care homes?
Yeah, I'm board certified in internal medicine and geriatric medicine. I'm the section chief of the section of geriatric medicine in Princeton Hospital. I oversee the geriatric services and the ACE unit there, acute care for the elderly. I'm fellowship trained in geriatrics, and I work part-time for the hospital and also have a private practice in geriatrics. So the majority of my patients are frail elders with dementia.
And as I understand it, you work in 2 dementia care homes.
I do, yeah.
Okay. Those homes have been in existence for a while because they predated this switch of the licensing to dementia care homes, correct?
That's correct.
But how many beds are in each of those homes?
The 2 facilities I visit have 12 and 15 beds.
Okay. And how many staff people are required for the 12 and 15 beds, generally speaking?
There are, when the 15-bed facility is at capacity, 3, and presently there are 2 in each.
And that's as per applicable New Jersey license requirements?
Correct.
And you find that that's adequate staffing?
That's been my observation, yeah, in both facilities.
Okay. And roughly speaking, how much is the per diem charge for those 2 facilities?
I'm not sure the exact amount, but I know it's just over 300
So it's
dollars
greater,
a day.
it's greater than what's being charged at the proposed facility.
That's correct.
And those are viable businesses that appear to be thriving, doing just fine. They're not going out of business,
That's my
looking
understanding.
to sell the properties or anything. Okay. So is it your opinion that the dementia care home model is a workable model, even without accepting Medicaid, charging the per diem you have proposed for Green Care Farm?
That's my opinion, yes.
Okay, and can you please also just circle back around and explain to us what your personal relationship to Green Care Farm is?
Well, I'm a co-owner with Raj Singh, who gave testimony during the last hearing.
Okay. All right, do you have any specific questions for Dr. Baril?
Yes. And this was raised last time. The two facilities that currently exist, they don't have anything like farm or other amenities like what you've described. Is that correct?
That's correct. They're homes.
So who handles the custodial, the feeding, and so on? Do you have extra staff for that?
So in both facilities, there are two staff members, and they help with guiding the patients to, getting up in the morning and getting dressed and helping with food preparation. The two staff members and then overnight staff members help with food preparation.
What
That's your
about
question.
garbage collection and cleaning and changing linen and, the kind of daily things that are generally handled by support staff?
So they do have extra staff that come in to help with garbage and occasional house cleaning, but for the most part, those two staff members, and then there's a nurse, director of nursing that comes in also that helps with medication, dispensing medication throughout the day. But they're able to care for all of the residents. These are, I want to clarify, these are residents, people with dementia who are still able to walk about and with some guidance able to dress themselves and maybe needing a little assistance with bathing. So these are people with mild to moderate dementia. These are not people who are bedbound.
I'm assuming that. As a practical matter now, here in this particular facility that is before us, there's now going to be other amenities such as dealing with animals, the greenhouse and so on, which will also involve, it seems to me, some expansion of staff. Is it realistic really to have just 3 people? And I understand that I'm coming from, that's your testimony. If you had 5 or 8, unless Ms. Dolan tells me otherwise, I'm not sure that it's going to change the traffic pattern, but I'm trying to understand, or the traffic impact, but I'm trying to understand how realistically 3 staff per session can exist.
I think my partner testified during the last hearing that if indeed at full capacity we need an additional staff member, we may hire an additional staff member. We will likely have someone that's overseeing the greenhouse operations, and that person may or may not be involved in helping with patient care. But I do believe that three caregivers is an okay model for the level of functioning that our patients will have.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Brill, also just to clarify, I think I hear you also distinguishing between your full-time staffing requirements and perhaps some services that will be coming in and be provided, such as you discussed the RN that will have to come in to review medications. That is not a full-time employee.
Likely will be a part-time.
And then if somebody were to come in and collect trash or something of that nature, that is not a full-time employee.
Correct.
It's essentially like a service provider that's coming into the facility. Okay.
This will be the same caregivers, or are you going to have different ones?
Regarding, I'm sorry, the same caregivers that are staffed there? Well,
Caregivers, are you going to have the same individuals, or are you going to
there
have?
will be full-time. There'll be full-time employees. Yes, sir.
Do these patients make their own bed in the morning,
If they're able to. So one of, the concept here is to get the residents as engaged as we possibly can and to keep them busy and offer a kind of different model than the traditional dementia home where sadly they're parked in front of a television set all day. So helping with their own, making their own beds, and as much as they're able to help with food preparation and help with gardening and activities throughout the day. I mean, that's the whole idea of this, just to keep everyone busy, cognitively busy and physically busy.
But does that realistically happen?
That's our intention, sir.
Oh, okay.
That happens in model. Well, this model has been demonstrated well in Europe, and so there are thousands of green care farms actually throughout Northern Europe, and there are several care farm operations across the U.S., but not with dementia. So we're bringing this concept as a dementia home here to the States. But this model has worked successfully in Europe.
And so if the patient is able to, once or twice a week, whenever they have to change the linen on the bed, they do the full bed change themselves, or you have more people coming in for service? I'm just trying to...
Yeah, I mean, everyone is different. I mean, our model will be to the best of their ability, if they're willing and able to just get them engaged in as much activity as they can throughout the day.
Yeah, I think this whole idea is a good idea, but as I claimed the last meeting, it was hard for me to understand that you can run a facility with 15 people, feeding them, cleaning up after them, taking care of the animals, taking care of the nursery with three staff members. So
Yeah.
so now you've added service people.
So I don't know that we actually gave testimony. I'm sorry, I forget, and I did review the videotape regarding
confirm on 3
the
people.
animals.
Yeah.
But we hope to have chickens and certainly a dog and a cat, and there may be some very small animals like a goat or something, but there's not going to be farm animals that need to be milked or cared for throughout the
Even
day.
if you have a dog, it takes care.
Sure.
Had to do it, Okay. Thank you.
How
Any-
will the patients be selected?
So, well, there'll be marketing and promotion, and they'll be selected or recommended. Typically, they're recommended by their primary care physician. So when patients are having cognitive impairment and can't no longer live alone, they visit their doctor or neurologist, and a recommendation is made to the family, or the family seeks advice from their physician about assisted living or nursing home placement or dementia home placement. So referrals will probably come from social services, social workers.
Financing is on Lee, or is it on?
That's correct. That's correct.
And of
Family.
course, they'll have to be able to afford the $100,000 a year to stay there,
That's correct.
because there's no insurance payment or anything, right?
That's correct.
Any other questions?
I just had one about there was the length of time, this average length of time that people stay.
It's a really good question. So the average from the diagnosis of Alzheimer's dementia to death on average is about 7 to 9 years. That's variable. So we're looking at this window of about 3 to 4 years where people will be high functioning and memory impaired, that they can't live alone independently, but high functioning enough that they could live comfortably in this kind of setting.
And that means correct me if I'm wrong, what you're leaving unsaid is that there reaches a point where these patients will be removed to another facility.
That when their care is at such a point that they may need a nursing home placement or a higher level of care. Yes, sir.
This is called a dementia facility. Now, Alzheimer's is one type of dementia, but I'm assuming that you'll have other kinds of dementia where there isn't going to be the level of deterioration. You're just dealing with mental functioning that's
So dementia is, just very briefly, dementia is an umbrella term that basically defines, for the most part, an older person with cognitive troubles and usually memory troubles. 85% of all dementia cases in the U.S. are Alzheimer dementia cases, and the remaining few are vascular dementia, dementia from strokes, or Parkinson-related dementia, and then there are some more rare types of dementia.
Other questions? Next.
Can we reserve any public questions for him? We'll get through our
Oh,
other.
we're only doing traffic, right?
Yes.
So we'll do that and then bring him.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Burrell. So just to reiterate at the last hearing for anyone in the audience who may be, who was not here last time, this is Betsy Dolan, traffic engineer for Green Care Farms, and she's already been certified as an expert and provided some testimony. And at the last hearing, Raj Singh, who is the other director of Green Care Farms, provided some testimony that in the event that they did discover some additional staffing were needed, they would certainly respond accordingly. It raised the question of whether any additional staffing would change the traffic impacts of this project, and we have brought Betsy here to address that specific question.
At the last meeting, I presented the results of my December 2018 report that was submitted, and the trip estimates were based on the Institute of Transportation Engineers assisted living trip research. I think that the other category that was discussed briefly at the last minute was a nursing home, where there's more staff and the residents do need a lot more care. And based on ITE, nursing home, for the size of the building and the number of beds, the maximum would be 9 trips in an hour. Even if we doubled that, let's say we just had 20 trips in an hour for the purposes of this discussion, that still is well below what is considered significant in traffic engineering terms. Both the ITE and our State Highway Access Management Code define significant as 100 trips or more in a peak hour, and we're not going to get anywhere near close to that. That level, 100 trips per hour, is when you need a very detailed traffic study. You may create noticeable or negative traffic impacts. So even if we have a slight increase or a doubling from 2 to 4 or even 5 or 6 employees, we're not going to be creating a negative traffic impact. It's modest, really it's a low amount of traffic that's expected on an hourly basis, and that's how traffic engineers focus on the worst or highest volume hour. So we've come up with 9 based on the highest ITE nursing home estimate, and like I said, even if we were to double that, that's still not considered significant in traffic engineering terms.
And as I understand it, community residences are permitted in all residential zones such as this one, and the impact of this would be compared to a community residence not any greater.
Not any greater.
Okay.
Correct.
So, question. When you talk about, when one talks about the significant impact, you're talking about numbers. Now, I know that the people who have come here are very concerned about the fact that this is a very narrow country road. So could you discuss significance insofar as that impacts that kind of a road? Because if you have that kind of impact on Cedar Grove Lane, it's one thing. Insofar as people living on Bennett's Lane, that may be quite another.
Right, and I think that that goes to the design of the access intersection. We don't, for example, warrant a left turn lane on the road. The volumes aren't high enough, and there's engineering criteria for those types of things. So while this is a narrow road, and maybe sometimes you have to wait to get around a delivery vehicle or UPS or something, this is going to be a driveway that's residential in character, that has a long driveway so that people who are turning into the site don't have any obstructions. There's no parking or anything up near the road, the access intersection, so they're free to get off the road and come right into the site. And as for anyone leaving this site, they're going to wait on the driveway until there's a gap, and then they're going to turn. So I don't think that this is going to operate any differently than a residential driveway, or, for example, RSIS allows one driveway to serve 4 homes. I think it would be comparable to that type of operation. So yes, it's a narrow road, but this isn't going to be creating a lot of heavy vehicle activity that would really compromise the circulation on the roadway.
There had been a three-lot subdivision, I think, residential subdivision. How would this traffic impact compare with what that might have been?
It would be comparable, because that would be about 3 trips in a peak hour. We're talking 3 or 4 in a peak hour based on the ITE assisted living numbers. And now I think that those numbers make sense based on the testimony you've heard in terms of the operations.
Now, at the last hearing, we were told that these people do not get visitors. So, as a human being, and having, I can't imagine that someone goes to a facility and the family doesn't come to visit them. So they said there's no traffic for family, and they only need parking lots parking spots for visitors.
I
find that hard to believe.
I think the testimony was that sadly there's not a lot of visitors, because it's very sad to go and see a parent that doesn't remember you.
But you don't want to see them at all?
Well, no, but the testimony was there's not a lot of visitors. I don't believe there was testimony that there's no visitors. And so the parking supply is intended to accommodate the employees as well as the occasional visitor.
Can you restate the total number of parking spaces?
11 parking spaces are proposed on site. Maybe it was based on the prior plan. Is it 12 from the engineer? 12.
Just so everybody's clear on another thing, when you mention increasing employees, and that's a little, as far as I'm concerned, that's a minimum increase, minimum impact on what was a minimum impact to start with, but it doesn't affect the traffic volume for the services or any other auxiliary things that might be coming in and out, like supplies being delivered. That doesn't change because there are 2 more employees.
That's correct. There'd be occasional delivery to this property, just the way many people now receive their groceries that are delivered, or they're having more Amazon or FedEx deliveries. That's kind of the way life is evolving now. There's a lot more deliveries. So I wouldn't expect this to have any significant amount of deliveries. Of course, there's going to be vehicles coming in and out throughout the course of the day, but at a very low level. And we're talking about 4 as a maximum during a peak hour.
And then maybe you don't have this information, but when you speak of visitors, does this facility intend to limit the hours or days or whatever, so that, I don't know if
That's not a question I can answer. We'll get that for you.
but I mean, that would may or may not have an impact on traffic. I just don't see if all 15 patients had 15 visitors and all 4 staff members showed up at the same time.
I don't think
That'd be the worst case scenario that could happen, and I don't see that being much of an issue.
Yeah, we would have recommended hours for visitation.
Okay. Any other questions or anything? Okay, before we open up, you're finished with her, correct?
Yes.
Is there anything you want to add before we open up to the public?
I just have a closing statement. I can wait if you'd prefer.
Okay. Okay, then we will open to the public. We'll use this session to ask questions concerning the testimony of the two witnesses you just heard, and you will be sworn in. You can give an opinion. We are not looking for people to be speaking for other people. You come up and you speak for yourself. If someone is ahead of you and they happen to get the jump on you and make the point that you were going to make, that's great. We don't need to hear it 3 or 4 times. Once is plenty. Anyone with anything?
But you can say, I agree with him.
Yes. Come on up to the mic, identify yourself, and be sworn in. We do need you to speak into the mic.
Okay. And I need to swear you in. Could you raise your right hand? Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give should be the truth?
Yes.
Your name and address, please.
Betsy Kormaluk, 5 Napoti Place,
Thank you. Could you spell your last name, please?
Kormeluk.
Thank you.
Let me start by saying thank you all for being here. I am a nurse. I do feel for the families and the patients that need this type of facility. And what you've proposed, I think, is a very lovely idea. But as someone who's lived in the development across Bennett's Lane from where you're proposing, I don't think it's the place to put it. As far as the traffic, numbers are numbers. If you've lived in the development or on what I call the old Bennett's Lane, before Clyde was put in, that was the throughway. We have lived there for 28 years, and with each change, more traffic comes through. They built the 2 other developments, more traffic. They changed the intersection on South Middlebush and Amwell, cut through traffic. The people using it's not our road, but the road, do not obey the speed limit. We've had animals hit. We've had people almost in accidents because of the way the road is angled. You can't see past a certain point, and people come whizzing through there 55, 60 miles an hour. As far as people coming or going, if visitors come to see these patients, there is not a safe way out of that area because of the traffic on South Middlebush, because of the traffic on Amwell, and even the traffic coming out Bennett's Lane to Clyde and Bennett's. That's a blind corner. You can't see who's coming. So you're going to have elderly people coming to visit their loved ones that are going to be at risk to try to get home from there. The roads are deteriorating. It's a farm road. People are not experienced on farm roads where you have to stay next to each other or you both go off. We have people coming down the roads where you have to stop to the side because they don't have an idea they have to move over. The roads are deteriorating, the edges are cracking off, giving even less roadway to use. So the numbers might not say that you're going to make a traffic jam, but more traffic on a road that's already taxed and dangerous is beyond. And the other thing is the environmental. There is a stream down the hill from where this facility would be. Across from that and behind it is all wetlands. What would be the impact to those wetlands and the wildlife? The deer, I realize we're talking about people, not animals, and I understand people take precedence, but the deer that have lived in those areas, the open space, have had to relocate their travels again and again and again. And we never had deer in 25 years in our backyard until they started building and adding on this and changing that. We have deer that are hit and things. And those, we moved into our development it was a piece of paradise. It was removed from everything. We lived across the road, Amwell Road, off of Heather Drive for 10 years before moving. We didn't even know this development was there, so well off the beaten path. And to put now a commercial, no matter how serene it's built up to be, you are going to have commercial vehicles coming in and out, garbage, linen, food, supplies, whether that's once a week, twice a week, it's going to be at least once. You're going to have the staff. You're going to have the visitors coming and going. Where that driveway is a blind hill. The people coming down the hill can't see that driveway until they're almost on top of it, which is another dangerous thing. We don't want to have door opened, so to speak, to have this rezoned, to put a facility there with all the open space across the road. This is going to set a precedence. And we know that open space is for you to decide whatever you want to do with it. And we didn't move into a commercial zone. We moved into a quiet residential area, which even with the newer developments has remained a quiet residential area. And that, with due respect, I feel greatly for the dementia community and the care that they need, but this really, in the whole scheme of things, isn't the place to put. Thank you very much.
Thank you. One of the things before we go to the next speaker, I would like to make sure everyone understands. We are not rezoning property. Whether this is approved or not approved has absolutely no effect on anyone's zone or whatever. This land, this property is zoned R40. And just as a matter of consideration, that R40 zoning would allow a house of worship of any size, as big as any in the Franklin Township, to come in there by right with a parking lot and the facility. That can be. And you can come here and everybody can be unhappy, which we all probably would be too, but it can be there. That's a permitted use. And certain medical facilities are already permitted in R40 zones. This one happens to miss out on that approval because of a couple of language issues in how it's proposed and how the ordinance reads. So there's a lot of things that can be put there. Be careful what you wish for. Next speaker, please.
Sir, could you raise your right hand? Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give should be the truth?
Yes.
Your name and address, please?
Darrell Beatty, 1 Kristen Court.
Spell your last name, please.
Beatty.
Thank you.
I'd just like to start by saying I unfortunately had a parent that passed that had Alzheimer's. And I remember the amount of care she needed. And when you tell me you're going to have 2 to 3 people per staff to deal with 12 to 15 people, I can tell you it's not enough. And you're going to have farms, and you're going to have chickens and whatever you're going to have. 3 people per shift is definitely not enough. The doctor said we are a test case, that this has been done in Europe. I would hope as a board you wouldn't vote to approve it until you were able to verify that and check that it works. Why should we be a testing ground? I understand the doctor lives in Princeton. Maybe they want to look in Princeton to build a facility. And also, has anyone looked at property tax? Does it do anything to our property taxes? And that's basically all I want to raise. Thank you.
Thank you. This would be a tax-paying property, just like another one.
Yes.
That's what it does to the taxes. It's a tax benefit. Yes.
Do you swear
Eric?
do you swear the testimony you're about to give should be the truth?
I do. Eric Hugh, 357 Bennett's Lane.
Spell your last name, please.
H-U.
Thank you.
I just wanted to address that comment regarding zoning that Mr. Thomas mentioned. Yes, it's an R40 zone, and yes, a church is a permissible application, if you will, per the master plan. This isn't the same. This is a commercial medical facility. This is why you're looking for, well, not you per se, but this is why they seek a variance, because the use is other than what it's master planned for. It's not a group home. It's not a farm. You know, I hear a lot of euphemisms, but at the end of the day, it's a commercial medical facility. I have a few points, and my phone's fighting me.
Well, let me ask you, are you concerned about, your primary concern about what you just mentioned, or is it on the impact one facility would have as opposed to the impact another facility would have? You heard the impact of this. I know of no houses of worship that are presently presenting an application tonight, but in the last 5 years, this township's been inundated with them. So don't think that that possibility isn't there, because it is reality.
I do agree with that, and I feel
And
the
which
House
would
of-
be more impactful for getting the zoning.
I agree with what you're saying, but I feel the house of worship is immaterial in this conversation tonight, because the house of worship is part of the master plan. It's already allowed for. They don't need a variance. These people are seeking a use variance for something that's other than what's master planned for the area.
But the question was, is your concern that the impact of this facility, because if you had a house of worship or certain other permitted uses, there would be a substantially greater impact on the traffic and the and the fact that it is permitted would give you very little leeway to fight it.
I understand your question, and I'm not an expert in land use. I would say that, yes, I have an issue with a commercial medical facility or any commercial variance granted for an R40 zone property. I feel it sets a precedent for other R40 zones. I mean, I could put a massage parlor in my house. I mean, you know, that's, it opens a door. But let me get off that point, because I'm not the expert in that. I can't
It
speak
really
to that.
doesn't open the door. Each application stands or falls on its own merit. And
Okay,
if you
Mr.
want to do
Thomas?
a massage parlor in your home, I'm sure you would have to deal with neighbors and issues in traffic and parking. And don't be so sure that that would be an automatic kind of an approval. So it probably wouldn't. We're dealing with this application. It has no effect on any other application that might come in or not come in. This, right here, tonight.
Mr. Thomas, let me defer on that point, and we'll move on. The issue I have, the traffic expert, forgive me, I forgot your name, she didn't discuss some key stats. The road in question is 16 feet wide, 1/6. There's no shoulder. It's a crown road. You know, it's a country farm road. Just to give you a little comparison, for the sake of argument, an average car, in this case a Chevrolet Camaro, is a little over 6 feet wide. An average ambulance is 8 feet wide. So you're talking about 14.25 feet in total car width if you had an ambulance going one way and a car going another. That leaves, what's that, 1 3/4 feet? No shoulder, and that's if you're going to the edge. That's how much room you would have for two cars passing. It's not even a question of pulling over and letting one car pass. There's no room. We've had issues. I can't draw any stats, but I'm sure the police records will show any accidents that we've had on Bennett's Lane over the years. That's a very real issue that the person previous had mentioned. The wetlands was brought up. I want to also point out that the wetlands are owned by the state of New Jersey. The grading of the property runs south towards the wetlands, the stream on the property. So if there's no change in grading, you're going to have runoff into that stream. I don't know how happy the state of New Jersey Department of Parks and Recs or what have you that owns the place, I don't know how happy they're going to be having the stream polluted or what have you. I mean, that's an issue I want to bring up. The other point I want to make is that this is a rural neighborhood, R40 zoned, and I don't feel that our rural neighborhood, R40 zone, can accommodate a 24-hour, 7-day a week. This facility, from what I understand, is going to run 24 hours, 7 days a week. Commercial medical facility. I don't believe the noise, the lights, everything, the whole tone and timbre of the project doesn't match the essential character of the neighborhood. It's a rural area. We have farms, chickens, goats, cows, deer, what have you, but it's not a commercial area. And I would say those are my main points. Thank you very much.
Next.
You swear the testimony you're about to give should be the truth?
Yes.
Your name and address, please.
Doug Lambertson, 384 Bennett's Lane.
Help us with the spelling on that, Lambertson, please.
Lambertson.
Thank you.
40 years or so ago, I had the opportunity to put myself through college by working in a nursing home, HRF, or health-related facility. And many of the residents in the HRF were dementia patients. I think of one patient, Mr. Franti. I was about 20 years old, and he was, I'd say, a favorite of many of us who worked there. Mr. Franti disappeared one day. This was on Staten Island. 2 days later, he was found at his wife's grave in Brooklyn. Why is that significant? What are the security facilities going to be like here? Are the residents going to be allowed to wander about? Now, my wife and I and our family moved in 14 years ago with the idea in mind that we're moving into a very rural area with preserved farmland. Now you're considering putting a commercial facility with people who obviously are limited with regard to their capacities and cognitive abilities, and if they're not fenced in and watched, they will wander off the properties.
I respond to that?
Yes.
Last time, and I guess you weren't here last time, part of the plan is that there is going to be a enclosed, fenced-in area that about 2.5 acres of it will be available to the residents, but there will be a locked gate, and they will not be, in principle, allowed to get out. It will be a secured facility.
In principle. I worked
You're
at a nursing home
always dealing with
that
in
was
principle,
was
but-
fenced all the way around with security guards, multiple staff, not 3 people. And Mr. Franti was still able to wander off and find his way to Brooklyn. We still, to this day, I don't think know how he got there, but was found by the police and brought back to us. The concern for many of us who have properties with things like swimming pools on them, which we do, and we have to have, by code, a gate, a fence and a gate so high that self-closes and latches and locks to keep children safe, mainly. Now we're talking about 5, 5.5, 6 foot tall people who would be able to open these gates and wander into our properties. And I don't think anyone can assure us that, regardless of the attempt at security, that these folks won't wander away. And it puts them at risk as well on a road, for reasons already stated, is unsafe as it stands now. It's an unsafe road. I'm right across the street from there, and I go out to get my mail at night and flag people down to slow them down, yes? Because the speed on that road is crazy. Some people who are just going between South Middle Bush and Clyde Road, Bennett's Lane on the other end. Our little country road is a highway to some folks, and I fear for those residents that may wander in the path of a car. If deer are going to get hit, it's very likely a person could get hit as well. The other concerns, I agree with, obviously, the width of the road issue is significant. It's easy to drop off across the street from me, where Duval's home is. If when I'm pulling out of my driveway, if I'm not careful, I'll end up in a ditch. And there have been times where I've helped people get out of the ditch on that road further down when they've slid off and their car ends up in the ditch. So the width of the roads, I agree with that issue. Property values. Anybody concerned about property values? Okay. That needs to be considered. Property values are struggling to go up in our area. We bought into developments that would be considered high to middle high end, with the idea in mind that over time these property values would grow. They have dropped. Putting a commercial facility plopped down in the middle of our country rural area is only going to harm, not help, property values over there. So we are among the more higher taxed people, I would say, in this township. And why is a commercial facility going to be plopped into our area? I think there's agreement on these concerns amongst the folks that own property there as well. Thank you.
One question out of curiosity. In the facility that you work, how many patients were there?
It was a large facility. It was over 500-bed facility.
Not like 15. A little bigger than 15.
A little bigger than 15, but the ratio of patient to staff member was about 3 to 1.
But you had a continuum of different severities and different kinds of people.
Yes, the health-related facility, though, these folks, what these gentlemen are proposing to put in our neighborhood, right in our backyard, essentially, is a health-related facility of people that are able to get up and walk around and take care of themselves. Okay, and when they do that, they will wander away.
Also, just out of
if an 80-plus-year-old man can wander away from a secure facility with security guards and fences and a huge parking lot and find his way how to Brooklyn from Staten Island, we're going to find them walking across our lots.
Well, I can't answer that, but one of the other questions I had is, why wouldn't you consider the farms commercial activities?
Well, they were there before we got there. So when we bought our homes, we knew they were there. We knew the machines were there, the cows were there, and that was part of the allure, yes?
Okay.
That was part of the deal, if you will, from the township.
There's still commercial activities.
Yes, but not of this type at all. This is entirely different than a farm.
But you're saying it's entirely different from a farm. Yeah, it's a lot smaller. I would think that virtually every, excuse me, I would think that almost any use surrounding this property has more impact on this facility than the other way around. I support farms. I love farms. You move in next to a farm, you're going to get odors, you're going to get animal noises, you're going to get machinery.
Welcome to our world, right?
Well, I listen to you. You're going to get all that, right? That's going to impact this facility, but they know it's there. They're moving in. Right? This facility is not going to impact the farm. Right?
The board has not voted on this matter yet. We're
Thank
listening
you.
to the public right now. Could you raise your right hand? Do you swear the testimony you're about to give should be the truth?
Yes.
Your name and address, please?
Alex Karazi,
Spell your last name, please.
Kharazi.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman, good evening, everybody. I have a tremendous respect to the opinion of the board, of course, and I've lived in across the street from Bennett for about 20 years. A nice, quiet place, and the biggest concern that I have is that the quality of life by bringing this facility is going to change. And I know I value the project. It's a good project, but not in that lane. There are other places in town, like the City Grove Lane, which is more or less a commercial area. It'll serve better to have it there versus at the location that they have in mind. So respectfully, I'm asking the board members to please hear the neighbors, respect their opinions, and respect their desire. And I hope at the end of the day, you do not approve this project. Thank you.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give should be the truth?
I do.
Your name and address, please?
Stephen Kormeluk, Kormeluk, 5 Napodi Place.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I want to thank the board for allowing us to speak this evening. I have a couple of questions before I have a summary of comments. Testimony that was offered earlier spoke about the success of these types of facilities in Europe. And I had a question, don't know who to direct it to, but are those facilities typically urban areas, suburban areas, rural areas, or a mixture?
You know.
Rural areas.
Rural areas
Correct.
exclusively? There's none suburban or urban?
I've been to about 50 of them in the Netherlands, and every single one of them was rural.
Okay, thank you. I think a lot of my concerns have been raised by previous speakers. I think the bottom line that I want to know about is what's the benefit to the community and to the neighborhood of having such a facility located at the proposed site? We've heard about some of the negatives. I'd like to hear some of the positives that could be offered to the community. Will there be some ratables that will help offset our tax burden? Will there be some preferential treatment for residents from the township, the immediate area? Or will they be coming from an outside area, which would then bring traffic from an outside area? If there's no preferential treatment and people could be coming in from outside the area, it seems to me that there's a much better option for location, such as other commercial areas. The township has probably dozens of vacant facilities, office facilities, semi-office facilities that are probably very suitable for this type of facility, that could probably be revamped and refurbished at a lower price and provide exactly what's being provided at this proposed facility. And if it's in the existing commercial zones, access to those areas are not as restrictive as the current site. Roads are better. Access to major highways is better. So the bottom line of my question is, why here? Why in this particular spot? I also had a few concerns about the current proposal. It calls for a 15-unit residence facility. Have not seen the plans, and if this was asked in the previous meeting, I was not in attendance, so I apologize for the duplication of the question. But is this a fixed type of occupancy, or is there the possibility of expansion, either through additional floors or additional horizontal floor space?
If there was to be an expansion, it would have to go through another board hearing.
But
I don't know why, what the,
if you,
why
t-
that's funny.
I would suggest, however, and it would be good if you did take a look at the plans, because the way this structure was specifically designed, it could not be located in a repurposed commercial building. It was specifically designed to deal with, I mean, it's a new design. It's like a V, and it was designed to make things easier for dementia patients to locate their rooms. The whole concept of this facility is to have an open area where there are a whole variety of activities. If you put such a facility into a repurposed commercial building, you're talking about another facility entirely. So that when you say why here, insofar as the applicant is concerned, that's why there. And I urge you, at least with respect to a response to your question, that is why here. And as described it doesn't sound like it's possible for there to be an expansion.
I appreciate that answer, and I will look at those plans, just with all due respect. Having worked at some of the facilities along Davidson, some of them have courtyards of pretty good size. Some of them are semicircular in nature. It seems that it could fit some of those needs also, not on day one, but certainly if there's a revamping or refurbishing, that those kinds of facilities could be turned into that kind of facility. And I have no idea what the rateable situation is, but for these abandoned facilities, is that something where the township could possibly leverage for additional taxes that they're not getting now? I don't know if those are being paid or if they're in arrears or what.
For what it's worth, in terms of ratables, this was a project that was vetted by our economic development group specifically to bring in ratables.
Okay.
It is not a non-profit operation.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear because, a lot of the residents probably, if they've looked closely at their little tax card that they get every year, the land values in our development were increased $50,000 over last year. So depending on where the actual tax rates fall for the township, that could have a negative impact on our taxes. So additional ratables would certainly be a benefit. Let me just double check. I think all of my other concerns and questions were covered. Some of the security questions I had have been covered. Quality of life, taxes. Oh, and one last thing with regard to construction vehicles that come in. I'm not sure exactly what the expected route would be, but there's at least 2 instances in the last several years where some of the bridges / viaducts that are on the various rural roads have had to be replaced, causing additional traffic congestion because roads are shut down. I would hate to see commercial vehicles of size coming in during construction and causing harm to those roads again.
I agree with you, but here's my question. How different would that be if the 3-lot subdivision were developed? You would still have construction vehicles coming in, yes?
Possibly.
I think you would.
But would you have them coming in at the same size for something that's a much larger facility?
I don't know that it is a much larger facility.
Well, this is actually probably smaller than the total of those 3 single-family homes.
There would be much more construction related to a single-family subdivision. You'd have road construction, a very large, I think it's 600 feet of road that would have to be constructed, a large detention basin, and probably 2 to 3 times the amount of building mass that would be involved in the 3 homes.
Okay, thank you for those answers. Appreciate that. And as far as the last question is, do we have information regarding the experience on the developer, the folks who are going to run the facility? I believe it's called Green Care, in terms of their reputation, success of other ventures that they've had, et cetera, et cetera. That may have been covered in a previous meeting.
I'm not sure that that's a zoning question that we can address. Really, there are a lot of things that are legitimate questions. What we have to do as a zoning board is apply the statute and our zoning ordinance, and we cannot question whether or not some applicant has got a good or bad track record. Similarly, I mean, there have been some pretty crappy residential developers that come in, and we can't say, well, what's your track record?
Sure.
If they come in with a valid application, we have to take a look at it only from a zoning perspective.
Okay, no, I understand. So, just for my own edification and for the residents who are here, what would be the process after a vote is taken, and let's assume that there is an approval? What is the next step?
Anytime the board votes on an application, The board will then memorialize it in a written document. I will prepare that document. It's called a resolution. After the board votes on the resolution of approval, any interested party has time to file an appeal. That appeal would be in your county courthouse. It would be heard by a judge probably within 3 to 4 months. That judge, there would not be, it's called a prerogative writ trial. There's no live testimony. The judge reviews the transcripts of the hearings and decides whether or not he believes that he or she believes that the board acted properly and applied the proper law. If the judge agrees with what the board did, he upholds the finding of the board. If he disagrees with what the board did, he can reverse the board.
And assuming it's approved by the judge on an appeal, the applicant is allowed to go ahead and start constructing, get the proper permits?
Well,
or is there further approvals at the township level?
Well, two answers to that question. The first part is the trial court rules on it. It's possible that someone's unhappy with the trial court judge and they could apply to the appellate division. Everyone's entitled to go to the appellate division.
Okay.
If the appellate division rules on it unanimously, there's no right to go to the Supreme Court, except in limited circumstances. With regard to other approvals, there are many other approvals that are necessary, whether they be county or state approvals that would be required that are outside the parameters of this board.
Fair enough. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Could you raise your right hand? Do you swear the testimony you're about to give should be the truth?
Absolutely.
Your name and address, please.
Skip Schaefer, 2 Laird Terrace, Somerset.
Spell your last name, please.
Schaeffer.
Thank you.
Sir, I'm not going to argue with you tonight about your business model. I think everybody in this audience either has a family member or knows somebody who has a family member who's homebound, who needs constant care. On a one-on-one basis, that is an exhausting job, both physically and mentally. For you to say 3 people are going to handle 15 people, it's just not believable. Okay? It's just not credible. And it has more to do with the safety of your residents than what we're up here talking about tonight. And I'll tie into that again later. I'll just let you know I don't tend to mince words. There's a master plan in town. I don't know how many different categories there are: residential, commercial, industrial, retail. A lot of time and effort is put into developing that master plan. Some of you might have input into that plan. I don't know. We're not here disputing, a conforming use. Somebody who wants to open a retail store in a retail zoned area and wants a variance for a larger sign. We're here for a non-conforming use, where you've already said in the master plan that this kind of facility does not belong where you're proposing to put it. That's why you're asking for the variance. Something like that should not be taken lightly. Something like that kind of variance, after all the planning that's gone into previously, should rarely, if ever, be approved. You're setting a precedent for other non-conforming uses across the town. If you approve this one here, what's to stop anybody else in any other section of town applying for a non-conforming use in that particular section of town? Yes, you can disapprove it, but you've set the precedent that you're approving non-conforming uses. If this place goes out of business, you've stated, a new owner can come in and put an application before the board. It might be a worse business than this for this particular location. The chances are you're going to approve almost anything, because a tax revenue-based business is better than vacant land. And who the heck knows what you may choose to approve in the future. If you approve this evening, you are in effect nullifying all prior planning decisions and efforts that were put into the master plan. If you make one exception here, you're allowed to make exceptions anywhere. What's the point in putting the master plan together? These kind of variances should be approved rarely, if ever. For this particular location, are you going to tell us, are you going to look us in the eye and say, you have exhausted every other possible property in this township for this particular business? If that's what you're telling us, I hope you're not telling us that, because that would be a total load of crap. As far as Bennett's Lane, the speed limit is 35 miles an hour on Bennett's Lane. You know when people go 35 miles an hour? When there's 2 feet of snow on the ground. That slows them down to 35 miles an hour. It is a major cut-through road for South Middlebush, Amwell, Clyde, JFK. With all due respect to traffic study lady, I have never seen a rubber strip go across Bennett's Lane, counting cars. You have no idea, if you don't live in that area, how many people travel that road and how fast they go. We're not talking about just traffic impact coming to this facility back and forth. We're talking people that don't live in this area flying through on this road. Constantly. 50, 60 miles an hour. I'm outside a lot. I see it. Early dawn, dusk, pitch black night, pea soup fog.
We
They are
get the
plowing
idea
down this
that there's
road.
a
If they
traffic
see,
problem there. Let me
No.
let me just say something. We have no control over whether they go 50 or 60 miles an hour. You have to call the township police and you have to have them deal with it.
You're missing my point.
And we can't base a decision based on how fast the people are traveling on the road because nobody seems to be policing them.
if you let me finish my point, I'll address that. Okay? You're missing my point.
I'm not missing anything.
Yeah, I think you are. I just wait. You know, the pitch black at night, pea soup fog. Cars barreling down that road because they're the only one going there at that point of time. I'm just waiting to hear the thump when they slide off the road or hit a deer. You're going to have a fenced-in facility. We all know the stories. Daycare kids, special ed kids, Alzheimer's patients, they all get out. We've heard the stories. We've seen the stories on the news. Please don't tell me your facility is going to be impregnable for those people not getting out. Or the farm animals that you're going to have there. Your goats and chickens. Have you ever been in Bennett's Lane late at night? You ought to stroll down there and hear the coyotes howling in the fields. I have red foxes running through my backyard. How are your residents' anxiety going to be eased when they come out some morning and find a pile of chicken feathers or a goat carcass? You're going to have that secure facility to keep wild animals out. Plus, you're going to have the truck deliveries and so forth. Lastly, I want to read comments from you, Mr. Thomas, from last month's meeting. I just don't see how this facility has any impact on anybody. I don't know where you would find a better place. Wow. Let me tell you something. There's a very unsafe, disjointed intersection on Cedar Grove Lane and New Brunswick Road.
Irrelevant. Stick to the point. If you want a no
I'm
vote,
addressing you,
if
sir.
you want a no vote from this board, you need to give us objective issues that we can use to vote, because no judge will allow us to say, I'm voting no because I don't like this. We can't do that.
I don't believe you are objective, sir.
And if you want to debate that intersection, feel free after the meeting, and I will
Why?
talk to
Because
you
it
until
affects
2
you and
o'clock in
your
the morning.
property?
What?
Because it affects you and your property? I can't talk about it?
Doesn't affect me and my property at all. It has nothing to do with this application, is what I'm telling you,
Okay,
okay?
okay. Try to understand, try to reconcile how we might feel about advocating for our properties the way you do for yours at that intersection.
Excuse me. I've been here for
We
50
know how
years.
long you've been here.
I've been on this board for over 20.
Yes.
I've been advocating for Franklin Township. If it happens to fall on Cedar Grove Lane, it's an R40 zone too. There's 9 churches there. I'm not advocating against that. This application is what we're hearing tonight. This is what we're supposed to be talking about. So either focus on this or have a seat. There are other people waiting to talk.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you, sir.
And if you want to discuss the other, I'm available anytime you want to.
Now, you've just proven the old saying, politicians in diapers should be changed often, and often for the same reasons.
Excuse me, Mark? There was a question raised in terms of the master plan and to what extent this variance either comports or does not comport with the master plan. There was planning testimony. I know that quite a number of people were not here, but could you at least, in a summary fashion, address that issue?
Well, I mean, in a very summary way, the very reason why this board exists is to hear applications for things that are not in the zoning ordinance. When the first zoning act was formed, and then the municipal land use law, in order to even have zoning, from the very beginning, they basically said if you're going to have zoning, you have to have a zoning board, because and not every single use that's ever contemplated a town is necessarily going to think of, or there's going to be unique circumstances affecting properties that where somebody's going to have to come in and grant and ask for relief from the zoning ordinance. So, so I don't think that, a lot of the comments I've been hearing is, you should disapprove it because it's not permitted in the master plan or the zoning. Well, that's not the reason. That's why they're here. So I don't know if that answers your question generally. I can certainly answer more questions.
There was also planning testimony that said that certain proofs had to be satisfied, so that, for example, unlikely that if a large massage parlor operation came into this same place, positively consider application. What is it about this application that satisfies the have to consider?
Well, I'll summarize the testimony that the planner gave, which was they basically have to satisfy 2 main things. One is the positive criteria and the negative criteria. On the positive criteria side, they have to prove that the site is particularly suitable for the use. The applicant presented testimony indicating, in his opinion, how the site is particularly suitable. But then he basically said he doesn't actually even have to present that because it's an inherently beneficial use. And when something is an inherently beneficial use, and that's something that benefits the public good, not just from a Franklin perspective, but from a statewide perspective, and there's a whole number of categories of uses, hospitals, assisted living facilities, a facility like this is inherently beneficial. They don't even have to prove that it's particularly suitable for that location. But again, his opinion on the positive criteria was twofold. Again, it was inherently beneficial, and he felt that it was particularly suitable for the site. And then on the other side, they have to prove that the site does not have a substantial impact on the surrounding area and on the zone plan. And he gave testimony based on his own opinion, based on the traffic testimony, based on the design of the site itself. It's the architecture of the building, the layout of the property, the screening, etc. And on balance, he felt that the positives outweigh the negatives.
So the expert, basically, that's the expert testimony that we have before us.
Yes.
And there's no expert testimony contrary to that opinion.
No.
And I raised that because one of the things that I think you need to understand is that we have proofs that are put before us that an applicant brings. And we have to consider the application in terms of the proofs we have and the ordinance and the statute. So that is the testimony, and most of you were not here, but that is the testimony, the expert testimony that we heard. So I wanted it to be at least summarized so that you all would hear what it was that we heard.
Go ahead.
Ma'am, could you raise your right hand? Do you swear the testimony you're about to give should be the truth? Your name and address, please?
Pat Rosicki.
Right into the mic.
Right into the microphone.
Pat Rosicki, and I live at 9 Laird Terrace.
Could you spell your last name, please?
Ricicki.
Thank you.
I have two concerns. One is I grew up in Franklin, and I remember Clyde Road when it was dirt. It was a dirt road, and I've seen it change to a gravel road to a paved road. I also, when I came here and when I became an adult, I decided to build a home off Bennett's Lane because I did like the rural end, and there was nothing but a wheat field behind me, and we couldn't even tie into public sewers. It was like, no, it's rural, you can't do that. But my concern too is I'm a nurse. I've been a registered nurse for 40 years. I still practice. I have a license. I'm very concerned about the resident safety. I don't know about that staff ratio. I've worked in all different kinds of venues. Right now I'm in oncology research, but I started out in pediatrics, nursery, newborn, maternal child care was most of my career. We, that's tough. I mean, 1 to 5. And these are probably more elderly people. They're going to get sick. I mean, I get sick. You all get sick. You might have the flu. You don't need hospitalization. You have 1 to 5. Who's going to help with the toileting? Who's going to help with the bed making? Who's going to help feed these patients? Sometimes you're just sick. You need somebody to help feed you when you're older. And I'm concerned about that staff ratio. And I'm also concerned they may not die of their dementia. I mean, these are people die from all kinds of causes. They may become ill. Not ill enough to be in a hospital or a nursing home, but just sick. Like they need a little more care. What about hospice care? They're going to come to the facility. And now, I still work, so I go. You try to make a left-hand turn onto Damer Road. It's horrendous. I hate, it's like playing chicken. You make a left-hand turn on South Middlebush Road at rush hour or on Damer. So I'm really concerned about the residents. If one, they might or might not get out. And I think that Netherlands model is amazing. I myself, if I needed dementia care, I would love that. I would feel at peace with chickens and goats and cows. But at the same time, I know a lot of people that wouldn't be. So it appeals to a certain sector of people. If you don't grow up in that rural area and you're comfortable with animals, it's not for you. In the Netherlands, if you grew up in a rural area, of course, it's going to bring you home where you began. But I don't think it's safe for people. I don't think it's safe for the residents because of the staffing and because of the location and the roads. Not even, I mean, I just don't think it's safe. I'm really concerned about safety of us as residents and safety of the patients. I'm very concerned about the safety of the patients. I don't know if you're going to have enough staff and if you're going to bring in extra staff. Like if I have a loved one and I'm like, okay, they're sick, they need more care than that 1 to 5 ratio. Okay, I'm going to hire a private nurse. I'm going to hire an aide. That might be. And honestly, when my mom and dad became ill, I was there every day. Back and forth. I'd go home, make supper, come bring them their dinner. Like I took care of them. So that's more traffic. And it really is hard to access and exit. And to somebody else's point where that hill comes down, it's really, really scary because you don't see. And now when a school bus comes, you do have to move over. And because it's a crowned road, you kind of tip. And some people that aren't familiar with it don't know how to drive on crowned roads. So it's a little bit dicey. But, and I don't know about the lighting. I mean, there's a dairy farm there. How's that lighting going to affect the dairy farm and milk production? I don't know.
There's going to be no extraordinary lighting there.
Not too much light, no? No.
It'll be like a house.
Okay.
It is a residence.
But 15 people, it's a group home, basically, right?
But it's a group home, but they're living there, and you're talking about people that aren't, that are just living there. They're not going to be having parties. They're not going to be up all night, or they're not going to
They
be
might
up
be.
all night
They're
more
dementia,
than,
yeah, they will be, yeah.
and on top of which, if you take a look at where the facility is, it's way off the road.
Yeah, I know where you want to put it. Like, wait, I know exactly. I've walked back there lots of times. But I am concerned about the people, the residents that you intend to put there. I am. 1 to 5 just doesn't make sense
You know
to me.
something?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I disagree with you. Again, the only problem is that's not something that we can legally consider. If we denied this application because we felt that the ratio of patient to caregiver was just simply insufficient, the judge would say, would you please get off that board?
Yeah, no, I understand, but I just think that they're going to have more people and more traffic and people making those left-hand turns or right-hand turns. So the staff that's coming in is going to have problems accessing and go. And then you're going to have, what about the ambulances and the police and the extra care that you need? Just because when people are ill, they need more people. They need more help. You might have a guy coming in with oxygen stuff because just because you're old or just because you have dementia doesn't mean you have most often have comorbidities that are going to need ancillary services that are going to have to be coming in, which is fine. But I don't know. I just don't feel good about it. I just don't feel good. Like if I had to go there, I'd like the setting, but I don't like the location. Like if you could pick it up and take my goats and my chickens and my cat and dog someplace else, it would be good. I just don't think the roads to and from are suitable for that type of use. And if people do get out, and if these are elderly people visiting, like I know a lot of times like a spouse will come every single day to visit their loved one. It's just not a safe. It's hard to make left-hand turns in that whole area. It's just really, really hard. You have to gun it across, the Hamilton Street where it's 4 lanes off of Damer. You have to, you basically hold on and hope for the best. And that's what it's like in the morning. And so I'm concerned about the residents and the residents' guests and the people that work.
Liz?
That's it.
You've been on that road. Could you address those concerns, please?
I don't think that turning in and out of this proposed driveway is going to be much different than turning in and out of the various streets or driveways that are already along Bennett's Lane. We're hearing a lot of testimony about the problems that exist out there, but somehow all of these residents and the visitors and the delivery people are getting through the corridor and they're getting into and out of the residential streets. There's a lot of activity because there's a lot of, yes, there's cut through, and there's a lot of residences that already exist there. But I don't think that there's any way that this proposed roadway is going to operate any differently. There have been a couple of comments about site distance issues. The plans that are before the board have the site triangle included on the plans. It's interesting to hear that there's so much speeding, yet the road is so narrow that people are almost falling off the road. These are existing problems, and whether there's a few more houses developed or this residence for 15 people is developed, that's not going to change the existing traffic problems that are perhaps occurring out there or the lack of enforcing the speed. But again, this is a roadway that's going to be similar to the ones that already exist out there, and it's going to operate as those other intersections along Bennett's Lane
But my
operate.
concern isn't the driveway. My concern is not the driveway going off Bennett's into the facility. My concern is the road, like people come off of 287, like people that might not live in the area to come to that facility, the workers, the facilities, the waste management people, all those other ancillary people. It's trying to make a turn from, if they're going to use Damer to get to that road, which would be the easiest, or if they're going to take JFK because that comes off of Easton Avenue, if they're going to go around that bend on Bennett's Lane, that's my concern when they're going down. And those two roads are, and South Motor Bush Road is another main one. You can't make left-hand turns. You just can't. At rush hour, you cannot, unless somebody's kind enough to let you through. So it's not the driveway going into the facility. It's the road that's going to take our little rural on that little hunk of land that we all live on, that's all here, to get to the main roads, to get us to Route 1, to get us to 287, to get us to New Brunswick or wherever we might want to go.
But that's already happening. And
It
and
is, but
to
this might compound it. That's my concern.
This is a handful of vehicles, just as would occur
Excuse
from
me, you
a
can have a little
residential
order,
subdivision.
please.
This is not enough traffic to change the characteristics of what's going on Bennett's Lane and the
That's
corridor.
what I don't understand. I'm not sure. I respectfully disagree because I mean, I know the model is 1 to 5 patients, more or less, but you're going to have ancillary care. You're going to have aides. People are going to bring in their private people. You're going to have hospice care. You're going to have oxygen people coming in. You're going to have maybe an occupational therapist or a physical therapist. The person might be recovering from knee replacement surgery. You know, they have comorbidities. So you're having all these extra cars coming in, a physical therapist coming to the home. And yes, if it was a private home, you might have a person that needs a physical therapist coming in, yes, but it's not long term, not every day. Eventually that person that lives on 10-layer terrace is going to heal and they're not going to be having something. But in a care facility, you're going to constantly have people taking care of these people, and they are going to have, I mean, nobody gets out of here alive, and nobody gets, very rarely do you just live and then at 99 just go down. You usually have some untoward stuff happening in between.
Well, I think some of this would have to be addressed by the applicant, but there's this suggestion that there's going to be a continuous heavy flow of traffic in and out of this, and that's not my understanding. It's not my experience with assisted living facilities and nursing homes, and this is sort of a step down. Again, from a traffic engineering perspective, this is not a large enough development to create a major change in the operational characteristics of the road. Yes, there's going to be vehicular activity entering and exiting this proposed development, but again, you're talking about drivers who are unfamiliar with the road. There are drivers that are already unfamiliar with the road that are cutting through, that are making deliveries, that are coming to visit people. So that's a driver issue. All roadways are different. In this case, yes, we've got a more narrow road, but somehow all these subdivisions have been approved and developed, and the road has been acceptable for them.
What my concern is, like, I was, the little layer terrace chunk, there's, 32 homes, okay, that the rural area, the roads could accommodate. Then they went and built another big development down to that border South Mudbush Road, like Buffa Drive, that area, the newer homes. I don't know, maybe they're 15 years old, 20 years. I don't know how long they've been there. But that really put a burden on the roads. I noticed a huge difference trying to get to and from work. I'm like, oh gosh, this is taking me forever. I can't get across the road. And then when they just put those bigger homes right on Damer that go up to this water retention basin, that was like the breaking point. We cannot handle not one more car. And that's my concern. I know that if you take this facility someplace else, okay, 15 people, maybe 15 visitors a day, maybe 5 staff members, but rotating shifts, and okay, we can accommodate. But I think that's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. It's going to tip us. Like, you ever play that game Tip It, and you keep putting the things on, this is it, and I think it's going to tumble us. I just don't think we can handle one more thing here. And that's all I have to say.
Okay. I don't even know what else to say. I've said it all,
You swear the testimony you're about to give should be the truth?
I do.
Your name and address, please.
Tony Ricicki, R-I-C-I-C-K-I, 9-Layer Terrace, Somerset, New Jersey.
Thank you.
What I'd like to do is I'd like to just confirm what my wife said, in that the traffic in the area is escalated. You know what? I think it's a time bomb. Sooner or later, we're going to have a tragedy over there. Somebody's going to just go a little too fast. They're going to kill somebody. They're going to run over a child. Could even be one of your patients. Who knows? I mean, these things do happen, okay? Now, we all like to put round pegs in round holes, right? Isn't that what you guys like to do? These people want the round peg in a round hole, too. Part of it is that they don't hate dementia patients, okay? My mother lived in a home for 12 years. I watched her deteriorate. I saw what high-functioning dementia patients can do. Maybe I'm a little jaded, but Old McDonald's Dementia Farm isn't the business model that I subscribe to, okay? In fact, honestly, you people don't hate dementia patients, okay? We may need the facility at some point. What I'm saying is 15-person facility. This area in Central Jersey has more than enough capacity in both the care homes, the assisted living homes, and other places too that go even further. So putting this there really doesn't make sense, okay? Yes, it may put the square peg, okay, in the round hole. That may be what everybody wants, okay? Not what these people want, because they're going to live it every day. I'm going to live it. I'm going to see the traffic, and it's going to happen. Greater traffic. Oh, yeah, it's going to happen. And you got to come there, okay? You want to come there to my house? You can have breakfast. I'll take you out there, and you can see the traffic flow, okay? Really, okay? And you'll see just how miserable it is. And you can walk out on the road, okay, and get yourself run over by yahoos that come through there, okay? Now, don't believe me. Just wait for something terrible to happen. There was stuff that terribly happened up there by Blackwell's Mills until somebody finally put a light in up there, okay? Maybe you guys remember all that, maybe you don't. Okay, I'm not going to beat the dead horse here on this, okay? This doesn't make sense to put this right there. It really doesn't. It's not really a safe area, period. And I think it's way underestimated the number of people. I'll tell you what, you want to come over? I went to my mother's facility, and I'll tell you what, there were a lot of visitors. People went, sometimes they went every day. Sometimes they went once a week. But I'll tell you what, I couldn't get a damn place to park over there where I was going. That's how many cars were at that facility during the day. And I'll tell you what, there were people coming and going, services and thereon, okay? Thank you very much for your time. I don't support this, okay, on a whole bunch of different levels, okay? But I do understand a little bit about dementia patients. And I'll tell you what, anybody here want to discuss that with me, I'll tell you the truth behind it, okay?
Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear the testimony you're about to give should be the truth?
Yes.
Your name and address, please?
Lori Van Dyke, Vandyke.
Thank you. Your address, please?
355 Bennett's Lane.
Thank you.
I was here at the last meeting, and I'm not going to say that the traffic is horrendous. It has no relevance to the facility. I get that. I really do. But a couple of things that, is it Dr. Singh or Mr. Singh? Mr. Singh, okay. Mr. Singh mentioned last meeting was the fact that they're going to have internships as well. Okay, you could have about 6 different internships, whether it's with animals, whether it's with nursing, doctors, et cetera, and so on. So there is going to be more people coming, internships. And it would be a great internship for anybody who's studying. But there is more traffic. What was the other issue I wanted to talk about? I'm sorry. Dementia patients. I brought up about my father and how he got lost in my backyard the last time. He had a lifeline with a GPS. Are any of your patients going to have something like that? Because they do get out, and it is a concern to the neighborhood. Not that we don't want them wandering around our neighborhood. We don't want to see them injured.
We are evaluating. There's a lot of really good technology out there.
Yes.
That's there's that we're in the process of evaluating.
Yes. Another thing, my father, he supported a family of 8. He fixed everything. We didn't have cell phones when we started driving. He took us out in the driveway and he made us take off the tire and put it back on. He was a good man. And when he soiled himself, he couldn't remember the fact that he shouldn't flush his underwear down the toilet. There will be facility issues. This happens with dementia. I have all respect to your expertise of traffic in and out. One thing you said last time is it's no different than somebody getting a delivery at their house. That's sporadic. This is mandatory. It's mandatory to have these deliveries to run a facility. So please just keep that in mind. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I think at this point, we've got the point about traffic, so maybe we could focus on other issues.
You swear the testimony you're about to give should be the truth?
I do.
Your name and address, please?
Susan Hugh, 357 Bennett's Lane. Last name is H.U.
Thank you.
One of the things, there's a couple of things that I wanted to bring up. Testimony from the previous week of the 18th was very much contradicted by what we heard today. The testimony back then, they said the patients are going to be with all levels. It could be the most severe level. Today heard they're only going to be highly functioning. Completely different, especially for the business model that was put out. The business model that was supporting the 2 or 3 staff, what was talked about on the 18th was that these patients are going to be doing the cooking, the cleaning of the 9,000 square foot facility, the taking care of the animals, the cleaning of the animals, the taking care of the greenhouse and the gardens. We're talking hot water, knives. I'm assuming they're going to be mowing. If not, then there's additional traffic that's coming in with the mowers, with all the people coming on. So I don't understand if it's going to be only highly functioning, or is it going to be individuals that, frankly, it doesn't matter if there's a telescoping hallway. It doesn't matter if there's a picture of them on their door. They may not even recognize it. So the testimony from last week to this week is completely different. Also, in the letter that was sent out to the individuals who lived 200 feet before, they said dementia or Alzheimer's, but not restricted to. That was included in the letter, not restricted to. So what does that mean? After this variance, if it is passed, does that mean the not restricted to, that they can put in basically whatever they want? It was also said that you had to approve it if they said, somebody said this it has a benefit. Well, who determines what is beneficial? I haven't heard any evidence whatsoever that this is beneficial for the community or for any of the patients. I was told that there was going to be dementia or Alzheimer's caregivers. I guess they're formal caregivers. But what does that mean? Are they accredited? What are they going to do? What benefits are they going to bring to the patients? What benefits for the community? Well, what I was told is that if a patient gets bed sore, they're out. If a patient needs nursing care, they're out. If patients have to be seen by the doctor, it's up to the families to take them there. So what are these caregivers going to be doing? I guess the caregivers are going to be watching the individuals while they're out hoeing and tilling in the garden and planting. But then if that's the case, then who's going to be coordinating with the doctors? Who's going to be signing in nurses in and out?
Okay,
So
I appreciate what you're saying, but we're kind of getting away from zoning issues.
We weren't. The zoning issue was based on the fact that you was just stated that this is beneficial to the community, and
Yeah,
that's
it
the
would
reason
be.
you have to approve it. What is beneficial? I've heard nothing that's beneficial. What's beneficial?
Their testimony from the planner was that this is a facility to take care of people with Alzheimer's, and that is by state law a facility that is inherently beneficial to the public.
But how are they taking care of them? They haven't even
But
said.
he just answered,
But they didn't say how they were taking care of them.
That is not a
That's not a
zoning
zoning.
issue. And in the same way,
Okay.
for example, as I said, if you have a residential development, it's not for us to decide that a builder builds something very well or builds something that is going to fall apart in 2 months. It may be a building department issue, that they may have issues with the health department, but from a zoning standpoint, and that's what we're here for.
I see.
I cannot address or consider the fact that a patient may get out and get on the road. It is a scary thing to think about, but it's not something that we can legally or legitimately put into our reasoning for accepting or rejecting this application.
So the individuals who are standing to bring in over $1.5 million a year, charging everyone over $105,000, they say it's beneficial.
No,
and
the
then we're
state,
supposed
the
to say it.
state has said it's an inherently beneficial use. That ends the argument. It is. If I might not like it, I might love it. I can't argue it. That's
There's
what it is.
There's case law that speaks to that. There is you know, we're bound by case law, we're bound by statutory law. There is case law that speaks to certain kinds of uses being inherently beneficial.
And this was not one of them. It was proved. They said it was close, but not, but it was not one. And that's what it was
You're
said.
mixing it up. It's not a different type of facility. The facilities were defined differently. A dementia care facility is considered to be an inherently beneficial use in the state of New Jersey.
The category that it didn't fit in, what we talked about last week, was that the municipal land use law says that certain types of group homes, up to 15 people, and those are people with developmental disabilities, people with head injuries, people with victims of domestic abuse, and there's one other category I can't remember. But those types of group homes, as long as they are licensed under certain categories, we have to permit them, and by we I mean staff, by permit, just as we would a single-family home. So what was discussed last time was, if this was ARC, for example, building this facility for a community residence for 15 residents, staff would have to permit, would never come here for site plan or for use variance. Staff would have to permit it.
Why are you even talking this argument? This is not the case.
I'm answering your question because you were mixing terms. You were saying there were certain categories that this didn't fall into.
Correct.
Therefore, it's not inherently beneficial. That was not the discussion. This is an inherently beneficial use. The discussion of what category it didn't quite fit into was the group homes. And the discussion was the municipal land use law says there are a whole category of group homes that we have to permit as of right. And the argument was that this is very similar to it, but the reason they're here is because they don't quite fit under those categories, so they're here for the use variance. That's the category they didn't quite fit into, not whether they're inherently beneficial or not. It's two totally different things.
And again, it doesn't fit. It's not R40. That's the reason they're asking for a variance. I hope that you vote no. Thank you.
Okay, next.
You swear the testimony you're about to give should be the truth?
I do.
Your name and address, please?
Gerald McNee, 5 Casey Court.
Can you spell your last name, please?
McNee.
Thank you.
All right, so I'd like to say is...
Make sure you speak into the...
Okay, so I'd like to say, I do commend you guys for what you're doing. I've been in that position. I have built a couple places myself, not in the medical field, but some commercial properties. So I've been in front of the zoning, building departments, the whole 9 yards. So I know it's an uphill battle. I wouldn't have a problem with this being converted to a 3 homes as it's designated for, but not for commercial property. Some things that I see, and I work 6 days a week because I own my own business. So when I'm home on Sunday and I listen to the traffic flying up and down Bennett's Lane, and I could hear it from my backyard, from my window, from my bedroom, it is disturbing. As my wife could attest, her mother's in assisted living now. And, to have 3 for every 15, the ratio doesn't work. 12 parking spaces is not ample for that. And I'm not advocating for them because I don't think the commercial should be in a residential area.
Supposing this were not for profit, I mean, you all are saying commercial, okay? So
Well,
supposing this
it's-
were not for profit, that is no longer a commercial. Does that change your
Well,
thinking?
as I stated, I would be fine with 3 residential homes.
No, I understand that, but
Because the impact in 5, 10, or 20 years is going to affect the neighborhood. Now, who's to regulate 15 patients? Because I could tell you in the assisted living that my mother-in-law lives in, it's 1 person per room. But yet, what do I see in some of the rooms? I see 2. So who's to regulate that? And as it grows, nonprofit, profit, as it grows and they're back here to add on to the facility, it's going to impact the area. And I agree with everything that everybody said here, everything. And they all have valid points. I live in the neighborhood myself. And it is rough getting in and out of there. And I'm not going to beat a dead horse when it comes to the traffic and the car count. But when I go to visit my mother-in-law on Saturdays or Sundays, and we can't find a parking spot in the facility that she's in, and there is a great need for these facilities, because as my wife could tell you, she has called numerous places and visited numerous places before someone would accept them. So I see this as not a 15 home or facility. I see this growing and expanding. It shouldn't be in that area. Granted, it's the farmlands. There are plenty of facilities out there with the V-shape, facility. So it's nothing new that they're proposing. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. So to retrofit another building or come into a commercial property that would be more suitable for this, where they could fence everybody in. And yes, they do get out, right? Seen it firsthand, right? But at the end of the day, I mean, I do commend you guys. I've been in this situation. It's just not right for the neighborhood. It's not. And it's not fair to the people who had purchased, like myself, who purchased 7 years ago, because it was more of a rural area. I didn't want commercial on one side of me and commercial on the other side of me. At what point does it get to be enough's enough? That's all I have to say.
Hello, my name's Joyce Kozlowski, 22 Napodi Place, Somerset, New Jersey.
Could you raise your right hand? Do you swear the testimony you're about to give should be the truth?
Absolutely.
Could you spell your last name, please?
KocyLowski. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody that works on the township for your public service. We do appreciate that. Secondly, I'd like to say I've been a township resident here for 45 years. I've lived for 25 years off of Bennett's Lane. I am on 22 Napodi Place. Before that, I lived on 20 Hadler Drive in Franklin Township. I love Franklin Township for the diversity, for the quality of life that we have here. And I particularly moved to our second home in Franklin, happily paying my taxes all these years, to be in an area that was quiet, that was farm-like, that gave me peace on a daily basis. And I love where I live. I don't want to see that destroyed for anybody to change a bylaw zoning that I staked my moving a second time in Franklin based on what I saw. My husband worked for the township, so I knew what the township was about and what the township was growing to be. I did not anticipate living here 45 years to now have a facility come in that is not appropriate for our area and is not zoned for our area. And that is the basis of my argument, not how well people will be served, not how the road is going to be messed up, which is all true. And I'm glad people will be served, but this is not the right place. I didn't come here for the peace that I did, for it to be destroyed because somebody's going to change now the zone that was not that way. And I think you need to take into account your residents and the fact that we are all happy taxpayers and we want to remain in Franklin. We don't want to be thrown out of Franklin. We don't want to have to move because we now no longer have a quiet place. That is not what it was zoned for, and there are plenty of places in Franklin Township where you can have the program you want and be successful. But it's not on our backs and our tax dollars. Thank you.
All right, that looks like. Okay.
You swear the testimony you're about to give should be the truth?
I do.
Your name and address, please?
Chelsea O'Brien, 359 Bennett's Lane, Somerset, New Jersey.
Spell your last name, please.
Obrien.
You.
It's fairly new. I live right across behind the trees with my husband. We've lived there for about 2.5 years now. We love our quiet little gravel road, specifically because it is a quiet little secluded gravel road. And across the street, there's nothing but trees. So we like to sit on our porch and maybe have a drink, maybe have a cigar, but be able to stare off into the trees directly across from our gravel road. Otherwise, that might become a very different view should there be a commercial medical facility that's eventually developed there. My questions, because I won't talk about the traffic, everybody else said they won't talk about the traffic and then talk about the traffic. I won't talk about the traffic. I had a couple of questions. So for the doctor, I think this is a great idea. Like everybody else said, I think it's a wonderful thing. I think it's really important that going forward we stay progressive in how we treat especially elderly people. I think they're largely forgotten as a population, and it's really sad. And so you mentioned that typically in these kinds of facilities elsewhere, it'll be very different than the usual of them being parked in front of a TV. So specifically because you're incorporating all of these extra amenities and opportunities for them to engage in activities. Again, that's just adding to personnel, because for them to actually be able to engage in these activities, they will need to have people show them how to care for chickens, show them how to plant things, and lead them on walks or whatever, what have you, and get them up and away from a TV. I had a question about them having to, in the same kind of line of thinking, and this is just kind of questioning certain things in your business model and having you consider adding to the basic plan additional personnel for specific reasons. So there should be some standard of care required as a medical facility that it's housing a certain number of people that are especially a population of already determined to be unwell elderly. So having them change their own bed sheets and kind of at their own haphazard discretion is not realistic. And you know that. I know you know that. So.
Okay, I appreciate your interest in participating.
Can I have?
We
can I say
can't-
one last thing? I
we-
think
but
you're
we
gonna
can't.
do.
We can't tell them how to staff their facility. They've testified that they meet all the state guidelines and they're state licensed, all of those things. We
Okay.
may not agree with all of those things. I understand what you're saying, but that's not a zoning issue.
Okay. So a zoning issue, I guess we can discuss the driveway. That would be a zoning issue, correct?
It has an impact on the traffic,
Right.
yes.
Yeah. So the single lane drive seems really unreasonable and sort of irresponsible. I think that is a nice idea because it's more in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. However, with emergency medical personnel needing to access the building, a very long single lane drive seems kind of unrealistic. So my question for you
Can we
is...
respond to that?
Well, I'll finish my question first and then you can respond. So my question for you is then, in the planning, did you compare between at least a 2-lane drive versus a 1-lane drive, and how that would affect connecting to the residential roadway as well?
The proposed driveway is 26 feet in width. It's a two-way driveway.
Oh, when you were talking earlier, you said that it was going to be a very long one road. one lane road where someone would have to wait if they were coming out or coming in until the other
No,
entered or exits.
There's some confusion there. No, we're proposing
what you said
a
earlier, so,
two-way
sorry.
roadway. I think I was talking in response to some of the comments about Bennett's Lane, that if sometimes people have to pull over a little bit to get beyond or pass another vehicle. But no, this proposed driveway is a length, it is a long driveway, but it's 26 feet. It'll have a stop sign and it'll have striping at Bennett's Lane to show the inbound lane and the outbound lane.
Okay, great. So for the lighting in the parking lot, I know you said there's not going to be a lot of lighting on the exterior of the building. It should be very similar to a residential facility. I'm just curious as to if you're going to have large post lights or nothing in the parking lot to light at night.
We have a different representative of Van Cleef Engineering here tonight. If you would swear him in
Could
and
you
tell me if you think he's an
Raise
expert.
your right hand, please. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give should be the truth?
I do.
Your name and address, please.
My name is Andrew Vaccarello, 32 Brower Lane, Hillsborough, New Jersey, 08840.
Spell your last name, please.
Vaccarello.
Licensed in New Jersey.
Yes, licensed professional engineer in New Jersey.
Just cover that base.
And in answer to your question regarding site lighting, we've done a lighting study which shows a model of the area, and it does show that there's no lighting that extrudes off the site, and the lighting fixtures are no more than 15 feet in height, and it doesn't go off the property line, so it shouldn't be visible from the adjacent properties.
Okay. I don't necessarily believe that. Okay.
On the site plan.
One last question is just for my own edification as well as for you to consider. Does this variance or allowing this variance change the maximum height allowed for building purposes compared to a 3-home residential lots?
No, the applicant is not seeking a height variance.
Okay.
They comply. Just like a home would comply,
Yeah.
they comply.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, any others? Then we'll close to the public. Okay, I believe you have some comments to make.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I won't repeat my comments.
Maybe
regarding-
identify yourself
I'm Vince
again.
Dominic. I'm the Township's Economic Development Director. I spoke at the last, I won't repeat what I said. Just want to quickly talk about the process. And although, while the public may not seem that this board appreciates all the comments, this board welcomes and appreciates and hopes that every meeting that they have, that they get the public comments, because they want that. It helps them make a decision. Just realize, as the vice chairman, the chairman, and our attorney pointed out, and as did our director of planning, that there's very limited ability for them to consider many of the points that you brought up. They act in a quasi-judicial manner. In other words, they're almost like a court. They're very close to a court. They hear everything. They have to hear everything, but they can only consider certain testimony, and they have to put weights on certain testimony. The testimony that's been given so far from the experts goes towards the proofs of approving this. All the testimony and the information that the public gives, the board takes in consideration much of what was said tonight, which is completely valid, it makes sense, and it's important, does not go to the same weight that the professionals, just by a matter of law. So I wanted to make sure that the audience understood that and appreciates that when the board makes a comment, when the vice chair says, well, we can't consider it, it's not because she doesn't want to or doesn't hear you, doesn't understand your frustration that there's something there that isn't allowed. They understand that. But they have to go by what case law says, what the municipal land use law, and what the land use requires them to consider. Thank you.
Okay, want to summarize?
All right, in conclusion to the applicant's testimony, I'm going to recap on the points that are most relevant to your consideration, but if you will all be so kind as to indulge me, I'm also Going to just go slightly out there. I'll try to keep it very brief outside of what is relevant to your review in order to also address some of the concerns of these people briefly, because I know that the goodwill of this project in this community is very important to Green Care Farms and the two gentlemen sitting right here. So I just want to remind everyone, again, I'm addressing the audience as much as yourselves here, perhaps more. I'd like to remind everybody that this parcel is currently approved for development of 3 single-family homes and a public road that would be developed. So that's a done deal. That's approved. All they have to do is go and get the remaining. Excuse me? Okay. I'm just going to continue talking because I'm not going to be able to hear you with your comments like that. So excuse me if I just continue to talk over you. This is not a dementia-free neighborhood. Every home in this neighborhood is subject to the concerns of the behaviors of people with dementia. Keep in mind that any home in this community could care for their own family member with dementia without the security that's required by the DCA of this facility. This application is for a dementia care home. It is not for a dementia care facility or a hospital or an institution. New Jersey has created a new license for a care home. As previously mentioned, this home is not dissimilar to a community residence, which is permitted in all residential zones in New Jersey. And just to expand upon Mr. Healy's explanation of the community residence also includes people with terminal illnesses, with head injuries, elderly, adults with physical disabilities who require supplemental services. This is permitted as of right in all residential zones. This use is not dissimilar to that community residence, which is permitted in this zone. And in fact, I mentioned this at the last hearing, that, let me just find my place in here. Those facilities are, it's currently, here it is. In fact, the disparate treatment of the dementia care homes, recently, dementia care homes were removed from the definition of community residences. That's currently being reviewed before the federal court because they don't necessarily see that there is any sort of legitimate reason to treat dementia care homes different than a community residence. So we have heard the testimony of Raj Singh, who has explained to us that the agricultural setting and activities that Green Care Farm has envisioned have many benefits for patients with dementia. This is of agricultural character. It's not an agricultural operation. The animals are better characterized as pets. Again, just as by way of example and not as by way of additional testimony, I'm a single mom with 16 chickens, 2 rabbits, 3 cats, and a dog. I am not a farmer. Green Care Farm is similar with the success of other dementia care homes and the range of costs for dementia care homes. Mr. Raj Singh testified that other dementia care homes charge much more and enjoying demonstrated success. The staffing requirements of this home will be as per the New Jersey Department of Health guidelines. At the same time, if there is a need for more staff, then they will respond accordingly. And so Betsy Dolan has provided traffic testimony, which clarified that even with the expansion of staffing, that this will not be anywhere near significant as per the standards. The driveway is residential in character. The project is a low trip generator. The project is currently permitted for 3 homes, which will have a similar peak traffic volume. Should there be an ambulance that services facility, its ability to navigate the neighborhood should not be of an issue. She testified that it is not dissimilar to package deliveries that likely occur in the area. Although the public has expressed concern about the possible transition of this facility to a subsequent owner and what use might come as a result, this is not an appropriate basis for denial. Regardless, we have heard the testimony of Dr. David Burrell, who has clarified that with his experience working in similar facilities, that Green Care Farms anticipates great success with this dementia care home. He provided testimony that the business model works, as exhibited in other successful dementia care homes. The model successfully works in Europe. This is not a test case, but a proven model in Europe. He also testified that other dementia care homes charge much more, and they are successful nonetheless despite that rate, which is required. Regardless, any subsequent occupant would either use the building for a permitted use, such as the community residence, or would require further land use approvals. We've also heard the testimony of Ralph Finelli, architect. He spoke at the last hearing. He was not pulled up again tonight, But great thought and detail, as he testified, have been put into constructing the facility in compliance with regulatory requirements for dementia care homes while implementing the vision of Green Care Farms. The vision uses an agricultural character and agricultural setting to exceed the quality of life experienced by most elders with dementia compared to what they would experience in typical institutions. We further heard the testimony and reviewed the materials of Michael Ford, P.E. of Van Cleef Engineering Associates. There were a few comments tonight where I'm not sure people felt completely satisfied. I would strongly encourage them to watch the video at the last hearing. Green Care Farms has produced multiple experts who provided a lot of testimony last time that addressed some of those issues you had in more detail. Mr. Ford spoke to us regarding the exciting topic, as he put it, of stormwater management, as well as provided response to the questions of the board and responded to the professional reports, meaning that the township's own professionals have also reviewed this project and provided their comments on it. Mr. Hugh in the audience expressed concern about the wetlands. That, as well as similar concerns, I will point out again that this project is subject to outside agency review. There are other permits that are required. Those agencies, such as the DRCC and the NJDEP, have got the expertise required to review that. They've already begun reviewing it. We have their comments. It's in the application. And so that is something that is absolutely going to be addressed. And in fact, the project has a lot of environmentally, optionally selected environmentally conscious components within it. Mr. Ford also, I will remind you, testified that looping municipal water access would be a hardship and is not necessary. The applicant has requested that approvals not be conditioned upon the looping of the municipal water supply. Looping will require extending the water line 700 feet and is again a hardship and is not believed to be necessary. Mr. Ford further testified regarding the flood hazard area and specifically requested that certain comments in the CME report did not need to be complied with. That's all within the record. Mr. Ford further testified regarding the green elements of this project, which are consistent with the township's intent for green planning. Mr. Ford testified that the New Jersey DCA reviews all of the site plans and architectural plans to confirm that the requirements for dementia care homes are met, and this does require those safety concerns, fencing and such. He further also reminded us that these parcels are already approved for 3 residential homes. Also very importantly, that addresses some of the comments that were raised tonight, is we heard the testimony of Mr. Jim Kyle. He's here tonight. He's a licensed professional planner. He explained that the board has the choice of options for approving this use variance. They can go with the inherently beneficial use of this project, wherein the positive criteria are presumptively satisfied. That's already been explained again tonight. Green Care Farms does not need to specify that the project is uniquely cited to this site because of the inherently beneficial use. But regardless, our planner went through the Medici test, and he did provide testimony of the public benefit, the lack of detrimental effects, the ability to condition the project, and the favorable outcome of balancing positive and negative criteria. He also provided testimony that if we were to even not go with the inherently beneficial use, that this project is particularly suited for this property. This property is particularly suited for this use, Even though not required because it's inherently beneficial use, this property has sufficient area, it has sufficient separation of the residential uses, they've proposed additional buffers, and the testimony of those experts who testified before Mr. Kyle established that the project has no additional burdens. Mr. Kyle testified that the use is consistent with the intents and purposes of the residential zone and the goals and objectives of the master plan. The use is residential in nature. The use is consistent with already permitted uses, again, community residences. I've got the full definition of them here if anybody wants me to remind you of what that list of already permitted uses in the community residence are, I will. And regarding the bulk variances that are also part of this application, Mr. Kyle testified that the negative impacts from the proposed variances within the setbacks are, quote, nil. There is no impact. Approval of this dementia care home will add a business model to the community and provide a valuable service. This is an inherently beneficial use, It's well suited to the zone, and it's a carefully thought out and designed plan with more concern for the elderly and more concern for the environment than is actually even required. We believe the use and bulk variance criteria have been satisfied and that the project is less impactful than the currently permitted 3 residents and less impactful than a community residence, which is permitted in this zone. For these reasons, on behalf of Green Care Farm, we respectfully request your affirmative votes on this application.
Any board questions? Discussion or motions?
Well, I guess it's up to me. The residents have raised a number of concerns that I think are fair and legitimate. However, as I have indicated, they just simply don't fall within our authority to address. I can't address the issue of whether or not a resident may or may not get out of a fenced-in area. I cannot address the issue of whether or not 3 staff members for 15 residents is sufficient. I can't address the issue of whether or not the amount of money they're charging is going to sustain their business model. We have to take a look at the proofs that were brought to us. Zoning board exists not because a use is permitted. That goes before the planning board. We exist because there are times when uses are not explicitly permitted, but there are reasons within the municipal land use law and the ordinance that permit us to consider a waiver, essentially, or a variance from the requirements of the ordinance. And we have to satisfy those statutory reasons. If the proofs don't satisfy them, you go to court, and the court will take a look at the history here, just the transcript and the documents supporting that, and see whether or not the record supports what we decide. And as I see it, from a zoning standpoint, I'm only talking about from a zoning standpoint, the applicant has satisfied the requirements of the statute and the ordinance. It is not our place to tell the applicant, gee, there might be a better place on Cedar Grove Lane, or wouldn't it be great if you checked out this other building that's sitting there waiting to be repurposed. That's not what we can do. It's simply not within our authority. If we did that, as I indicated, the judge would ask us what the heck we're doing on this board. And so for that reason, I'm going to make a motion to approve this application and to waive the looping water lines.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, before we call for a vote, just one couple of things here. I totally agree with the statement that Laura just made, and sometimes you get mixed up in motions and things like that, and you have to keep it separate. I want everybody here, I don't want anyone here to leave with the wrong idea about one or two things. First of all, everyone in there has a right to apply for a variance. All right? That was sort of intimated that there's preference being shown to things. Nobody shows any preference. This is not, if it's approved, this is not a zoning change. This is a variance for a particular property. And it does not mean that anybody else in any other part of the township can come in here, and because this may be approved or may not be, but if it is approved, doesn't mean anyone in town can come in with a similar application and they're going to get approved. It's not so. Each application stands by itself. Unfortunately, what the general public doesn't know, the worst applications that come never get to the board because the township staff does a tremendous job screening people or applicants and getting rid of ones that have no chance probably of passing. But they still can apply. If they apply, we have to hear it, and we have to apply the same standards that Laura just mentioned. And contrary to what was stated here, this board does not have a record of just approving applications. Absolutely not. Go back for the last 20 or 25 years, look at the record. We approve applications that the board as a whole, and it takes 7 votes, or it takes 5 votes for this one to be approved out of 7 members. So it's not taken lightly. And everybody doesn't leave happy, because there are changes that happen all the time. Happens to everybody. Whether this is approved or not approved, that property is not going to stay vacant. More than likely, something else will come along. This is what we're considering tonight. That's all we can look at. Now, if there is no further discussion, vote.
You have a motion and a second, so
Yes.
time for the roll.
Okay. Anthony Caldwell.
First of all, I'd like to say, before I vote, I'd like to say that I've been a resident of Franklin Township for over 27 years. I hear you. I hear you loud and clear. And there's a lot of things that I agree with what you had to say, but we just can't go that way in what we're considering when we have to vote. Our hands are tied, even though we agree to a lot of things that you may have said. I disagree. I have concerns about the number of staff. I have concerns about the roadway and the traffic conditions, but they're already there. But because of the situation that I'm in, I have to say yes, I have to approve this. Thank you.
Laura Grauman. Yes. Donald Johnson.
I have to concur with Mr. Caldwell. Plan.
Bruce McCracken.
I just want to say a couple of things. I think it was Stephen. You ended up saying, why this spot? And then we heard a whole lot of people say why they came here, why they wanted to be there, across from the trees, and there were several people who loved this spot. And I think when they looked, I'm not sure, but I heard you say on the tape that I watched that spot would work really great for what you're proposing. And and of course not for you, from what you think.
Okay, please.
Well, it's
please.
okay. No, it's all right. All those things we heard, and they're all valid. I'm not.
Hey, sir.
Let's sit down and let's let him speak.
Okay.
Bruce, wait.
That's all right. It's all right.
Public part is over. All right?
The second thing is, we have, I think, 21 Habitat for Humanity homes in Franklin. And I remember an application coming in, and they would put the Habitat Humanity homes right in the middle of a big long road and put a circle around it. And I didn't vote for that. But we have a situation here. Of course, Habitat for Humanity is for people who can't afford it, and it's for poor people. And this one is for people with a lot of money who have dementia. But it is a Habitat for Humanity in a sense, with when they say what they're up to. And today, this is today's Star Ledger in the health section. And it says, dementia, disorder mimics Alzheimer's disease. And that's what your points were all along. And it goes through a whole bunch of stuff about it. And to my question, how long they were going to be in dementia situations, and then what could come, they're doing research, or they're really looking at kind of like the neural pathways and what actually happens to people. And I think it's valid. If he's gone to how many? 50? 500? Yeah, in the Netherlands. So you're serious about this is what you're looking into. And I don't think this group is very powerful. And the request, a powerful request to fix that road might go to someplace else. I mean, it's a township road, maybe get the county to do something, take it over, or train, well, I don't know what you could do to get that road improved. Yeah, why don't you? I didn't hear anybody stand up and say, as a group, you got everybody impacted by that road, and not a one of you said anything good about it. And if the township, yeah, it should. I'm just suggesting a powerful request would be, if you want to do something about the road, take it to the place that could do something about it.
You're voting.
Okay, and I'm voting yes.
Thank you. Alan Rich?
Yes.
Alan Rich. Gary Rosenthal?
Okay, before I cast my vote, I've been a resident here since 1969, and I hear all of you, and I feel all of you. But as has been stated, this is unfortunately a zoning board issue that we don't have too much control over. All I can.
Okay, let's
Can I finish?
maintain order, please.
Finish. All of you, the applicants and the good physician has heard all of you, and I am also concerned about a number of staff, and I hope that the applicants have taken that into consideration and will amend to that. As far as the traffic goes, you have it now, and this new facility isn't going to increase that traffic any more than what you have at the present time. So I've got to vote yes.
Chairman Thomas?
It may surprise a few of you out there, but I do understand the issues that you bring up, and I do feel for you. Since it was brought up by one of your esteemed speakers, I do live on Cedar Grove Lane. I lived there 45 years when it was a tar and chip road and kids played in the street. So if you think I'm happy about all of that, think again. But you know what? The street's been developed as zoned. It's R40, and it's commercial in some areas and the other part of it. You're getting a facility I'd kill for to have across the street from me 10 years ago. So I understand what you're saying. I understand where you're coming from, but you've got to accept it and move on with it. Yes. Wow is right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Meeting adjourned.
Great.